Welcome to Mormon Land, where we explore news in and about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm Senior Religion Reporter Peggy Fletcher Stack. Joining me is Senior Managing Editor David Noyce, who oversees our faith coverage. Hi, Dave.
Hello, Peggy.
Before we start, here's a quick ask. We invite you to go to patreon.com, where you can access all the Tribune's faith coverage, ad-free podcast episodes, and the full Mormon Land newsletter. Again, that's Patreon, patreon.com/MormonLand. And if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram at mormon.land. Now for today's show. For a decade or so, Latter-day Saint female officers in the San Francisco Bay Area had joined male leaders in sitting on the stand facing members during Sunday services. In the wake of the Ordain Women movement of 2013, it was seen as a small step toward equality and inclusion. 2 years ago, though, an area president whose jurisdiction included Northern California abruptly discontinued the practice. In response, members in at least 3 stakes or regional clusters of congregations surrounding San Francisco expressed their concerns to lay bishops and stake presidents while also conducting surveys and launching a letter-writing campaign to church headquarters in Salt Lake City to return the women to the stand, all to no avail. Now the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has a new prophet president, Dallin H. And he recently said in an interview that the Utah-based faith has, quote, work left to do, quote, on gender equity. Amy Watkins Jensen, who served as a young women leader in Lafayette, California, has been leading a Women on the Stand Instagram account since the letter writing campaign failed. She joins us today virtually to explore what positive moves for Latter-day Saint women have happened in the past 24 months and what work she thinks remains. Amy, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Okay, why was the tradition of having women leaders on the stand so meaningful? It doesn't seem like a big thing.
Yeah, it's a small thing, but it is in some ways a really impactful thing. When women sit on the stand itself is symbolic. It always has been symbolic. It's symbolic of leadership and stewardship and priesthood power. And when women and men sit on the stand together, it's symbolic of united leadership and shared stewardship and the priesthood power that women and men both hold and share. So when you see women on the stand, it also it helps young women and women of all ages understand their importance in the sacred and their importance on the counts and the councils that they sit on as well.
And so to follow that up, then why was their removal so upsetting?
Yeah, I mean, it had been happening in stake conferences and in some of the wards in the 3 stakes in this part of California. As you said, and for a really long time, from 7 to 10 years, depending on the stake. And the reason that it was put in place was always about problem solving. It was always about church thriving, right? It's about women and men in leadership coming together, seeing that that there's changes that need to be made in order to best serve the people in these stakes, in order for flourishing and thriving to happen. And in council came up with some things that could be done for better representation for women, better visibility for women. But the goal was never just women, right? The goal has always been thriving and problem solving together and counseling together. So when somebody outside of the stake comes and says, "Hey, we're not doing that anymore," well, then what we did in council, right, and what we did thoughtfully inspired together, then it becomes sort of this hole that we all feel, right? That there's an emptiness of this thing that we did together that was important for us. And so we really feel it here. Many of us still very much feel that what's missing. Yeah, so it was really impactful for our stakes.
So, Amy, did anything come of the letter writing campaign? Obviously, it didn't succeed yet in turning women to the stand, but what did come of it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question because, in the letter writing campaign and then the open letter that I wrote, it's hard to know where those things reach, right? It's hard to know who read anything and who is considering things. But I think that it has mattered. I really do believe that it has mattered, that our voices have mattered in that. And I think that, like you said in the intro, when President Oaks said we need to do better for women, but and that he said specifically that I think his words were that the church hasn't always been, I want to make sure I get it right. I think I have it over here somewhere. Let's see. He said, we have work to do. We've not always been wise in using the great qualification and powers of the daughters of God. And I think that Women on the Stand and other things that have happened in the last 2 years are sort of like the canary in the coal mine for the understanding of like this greater understanding that there is work to do.
Okay, given that President Oaks is now, the top guy, are there any plans to make any kind of new push for returning women to the stand or whatever? Well,
here's the thing. We've just kept on keeping on here. We at Women on the Stand, we believe in being respectfully relentless, and that's not going to stop. We're going to have these unflinching conversations thoughtfully and respectfully. And we're going to keep on inviting new voices to talk about their experiences and where they hope and pray and wish for things to find greater alignment with our doctrine of partnership and to find greater mutuality. So we're just going to keep going on. That being said, I do think that President Oaks has in some ways really been at the forefront of talking about women and women's priesthood power, right? In 2019, he's the one who sort of started this greater understanding of how women actually do hold our priesthood power. And so it's interesting to have him as the prophet. And yeah, I'm excited to see, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful and excited to see what he means by how we can do better.
So what has been the fallout in your area and from outside the Bay Area? What, responses, good and bad, have you heard from these efforts?
Responses as far as like from leaders?
Just from church members, from leaders, that sort of thing.
In general, the response to, talking about Women on the Stand and talking about how we come into greater alignment with partnership and these conversations, there's been a lot of positive feedback, right? People are really excited about that conversation. And especially those who have felt lonely in their feelings about what they are experiencing at church. That's been a really positive thing for members like myself who've before felt like maybe we're the only ones that are sort of feeling this way, or maybe we're the only ones with these questions or hopes for more and for better. So that's been really positive. And my church leaders have been very supportive. Personally, my own church leadership has been very supportive. I haven't heard anything negative from church leadership at all. In fact, they haven't really, the First Presidency has never weighed in on Women on the Stand. From your reporting, Peggy, when it first happened, right? They distanced themselves from that. And I don't think that there's been no change in what they've said about Women on the Stand. There's been no change in the handbook. There's been no change that we know of, right? So yeah, everything mostly positive. Of course, there's individual members that don't like what I say or do, but I mean, okay.
Have you heard anything from outside of your area? Have there's been any? You do that Instagram thing. What feedback have you gotten from outside of the area?
Yeah, tons of the same kind of feedback, right? Just like people feeling excited to have these conversations, and also from local leadership all across the country. I've had bishops reaching out and stake presidents reaching out. And these are good men who are trying their hardest to to bring more alignment into their own spaces of stewardship. And I've had really great conversations with them and having them ask for resources and wanting to sort of understand how they can do better where they stand, lift where they stand. Yeah.
So, Amy, it's been 2 years. What positive improvements have you seen for Latter-day Saint women during that time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple of things that are really interesting and exciting. One of them is the mission age change that recently happened, having young women be in the parity of young women being able to leave at the same time young men and have those same options, I think is a really great thing. So, yeah.
Anything else?
I'm trying. I'm like, I know there are other things, and I'm trying to remember what those other things are. I mean, I would say that that the fact that we're even having the conversation is a really positive thing, because it wasn't just President Oaks. Of course, it was also President Christopherson, who he talked specifically about being in council and making decisions together in that press conference. And I think that's a really positive thing, that we're openly talking about the fact that we need to do better, and very specifically that we need to be making decisions together. In his words, that's the divine pattern, right? We're closer to the divine pattern when we do that, when we counsel and make decisions together as men and women.
What do you think about sleeveless garments being would you see that as a positive for women?
I totally would. Thank you for, I was like, I know there's one that I was thinking of. I do think that is a really positive thing for women. Especially since I know that it's been a conversation for a really long time. Talk about being respectfully relentless, right? So many women had given their feedback and asked for change. And I think it's an incredibly positive thing to have this new option for women, and not just the sleeveless garments, but the other options as well that are available, that I think are going to make a really big difference in the health also of some women. It's going to be a great benefit to women. So yeah, I think that's really positive.
So kind of listening to women who you say, as you say, have been righteously relentless for a long time on this. So sort of listening, not so much just the fact of sleeveless garments, although a lot of our commenters have noted that it means less judging. I mean, it could mean less judging, which is obviously a positive thing for women. What about, have you seen any negative moves for women in these 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that there's that we still don't see many women speaking in general conference, and the fact that we have so few women's voices that we're able to learn from and then take into our Sunday school lessons and our talks, and have that be inspiration and a basis for what we're doing in our wards and stakes. I think that's disappointing. And that's another thing that has been, so much feedback and so much, respectful, relentless, asking questions and asking for change there. So it's not that there was some policy that happened that was negative in that way, but I do think that that's reflective of sort of the glacial movement on these things, and a lot of women and men really hope for change in that area.
Mormon Land will be right back.
You mentioned General Conference, Amy, and now there'll be one less session. And while we, Peggy and I, celebrate that from a workload aspect on that Saturday, that means there's one less session.
Yeah.
where women could speak. And unless the church changes drastically how it allots that time, it could be fewer women. Or do you worry about that?
I do worry about that. I don't know what the future will be for that session. If there's a plan that will go back to having a women's session and a priesthood session, or if it will just be totally gone from our practice. But yeah, I do worry that will present, there'll be even less time available for the women who are in that pool of women who are able to speak.
Yeah. So I'd like to return to the lower mission age, allowing women to go on missions starting at age 18. You do believe that will lead to more women serving missions, first of all?
Yeah, that's interesting. I probably, at least in the beginning, I imagine it will, because I know that that's sort of what happened when the age was lowered to 19 for women, that there was this big surge. So I'm imagining that will be the case, at least in the beginning, and my guess is maybe we'll level out after a few years. But yeah, I'm guessing that might happen. Would you like to see women go because their missions are still set at 18 months. Would you like to see them have at least an option for 2 years? Or what I'd like is for men and women to have more options for the time that they serve, right? Not just women, right? That there would be equitable practices for women and for men, that they would have an option. So men could serve it for 18 months or women could serve for 2 years or vice versa. I think that there should be options for men as well.
What other possible impacts do you see for younger women from the mission or elsewhere? I mean, missions do tend to help younger members learn a lot more about church and procedure and gospel and doctrine and all those things. They come back much more knowledgeable about a lot of those things. So that could be the same for women now, more women, correct?
Totally. I mean, I served a mission. I loved my mission. It was a wonderful choice for me. It's not the right choice for everybody. It was the right choice for me. I learned a lot as a missionary. I also think that I learned about some of the imbalance as a missionary. And I think that a lot of young women also learn that on their missions. That's sometimes where we learn where the work is to do, right? That President Oaks is talking about. That sometimes is the first occasion for young women to learn, oh, wait, hang on a second. There's something not quite equitable about what's happening here. And maybe my talents and my voice and my priesthood power are not being used in the same way as that of my male peers. So I think that's interesting. That's an interesting part of it too.
Yeah. What do you hear from younger women about what they see as inequities in the church versus what they might see at school, in the workplace, or wherever?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the Pew Research that I'm confident that the church is aware of, right, and also the research from the American Survey Center, right, that is telling us that women are now leaving churches at a higher rate than men, and it's mostly Gen Z women, right? That's where we see that happening most, is in Gen Z women. And the young women that I talk to, they want to see themselves in the sacred, right? They want to see themselves reflected back in the church that they love. They want to understand themselves as integral and important to God's work, and to be able to bring their full selves to the work of building Zion. And that they don't see, right? There's such invisible labor and invisible work that women do, and they don't see necessarily themselves, right? So they say, well, my brother, he's going to get to do all these things, and of course he's feeling really comfortable in church, but I might be feeling some dissonance there, right? And what's possible for me outside of these chapel walls. And what I know to be what God tells me who I am and how important I am. And also that I can have all kinds of dreams of motherhood and adulthood and having a career. And I can decide with God myself what that path looks like. They feel like they have this autonomy and this understanding in a way maybe the other generations didn't have. And so when they don't see themselves reflected back to them, they start to wonder, well, like, what is this my place? Am I needed here? Am I wanted here? Or should I take my energy and talents elsewhere?
Good question. So what's your wish list for the church in the future and women? Would you like to see sister missionaries be zone leaders?
Oh, I think that would be amazing. I think there's so many things that can happen that don't take any change in any doctrine, right? None of this is about doctrine. This is all about actually aligning our practices with our doctrine. There's so many things that can happen tomorrow. Giving young women leadership roles, sure, that would be fantastic. I think that's wonderful. I mean, there's things like simple things like talking to new mothers about how they would best like to participate in the blessing of their newborns, right? Do they want to hold the newborn? Do they want to hold the microphone? Do they want to be the first person to give their testimony? Like having these conversations with young mothers and how they want to be actively participating in the rights of their own child. That's simple, right? That's simple, but it could have a huge impact. So there's a long list of things that we could do as a church that would help us realize our vision of partnership that we've been offered, right? That has been exemplified by our doctrine of heavenly parents and our prototype of heavenly parents and the side-by-side leadership that we understand from our temple ritual. And so I think that, there's simple things like just talking about Heavenly Mother more. It's simple, right? But having our leadership talk about Heavenly Parents and talk about Heavenly Mother has a big impact. And then there's other practices like, does it really matter if it's a man who's the Sunday school president? Or would women lead in that role as well? And would that maybe give opportunities for more women to be in our ward councils? I mean, there's a list of things that could be done that are simple things that could bring us into greater alignment with the doctrine that we cherish.
What about girls passing the sacrament?
Yeah, I think that's great. There's nothing that stops with that. Sure, there's nothing to stop us, right? If there's no doctrinal reason for women not to pass the sacrament. And, as you know, young women are passing sacrament to the nursing mothers' rooms in some places. And
well, it happens on rows in every church virtually, sure. Right? So, yeah,
exactly.
So,
there's no priesthood needed to pass it down a row or to pass it anywhere as far as my limited understanding is.
It kind of gets back to what you said at the beginning, which is like practical problem solving and thriving, right?
Yeah.
Is it, would you like to see women on the stand in not just in the Bay Area, but like across
I would love it
world?
Yes. I would love it if that were just available, right? That it was something that ward councils and state councils could consider together, that it was in the handbook of instruction, that it was like, this might be something you might want to do. And you could be prayerful about it and seek inspiration. Is this right for your ward? Would this make an impact on your young women? What would this do for you? So, yeah, I think it would be amazing to have that. I think having lived in a place where my daughters grew up, seeing women on the stand, I know it was impactful for them. It was important for them. It was important for me. It was impactful for me. And honestly, having been on the stand as somebody who was a young women's president in my ward, taking that turn, there's things that you can see from the stand that you can't see from the pews. That's why our leaders sit up there, right? It's like it's not just recognition. It's not just something to say like, oh, thanks for the job you're doing. It's also there's practical reasons. Yeah.
Did you ever hear from any of the general women leaders about it? Would they be the ones to advocate for it, you think?
I hope they're advocating for it. I know they're aware of my letter. I had Tamara Runya came to our stake and gave a beautiful talk, and she's just such an eloquent speaker. And she gave a instruction to all of the bishops and young women's presidents in our stakes and the stakes surrounding stakes. And she was really great. And I went and talked to her afterwards, and she told me, she said, "Oh yes, we know of your letter. Thank you for writing it." And she was just lovely and wonderful. So I think that, I know that that's part of what they're doing in those councils that they sit on, is that they're taking into consideration a lot of things and a lot of information from a lot of voices from all around the world. So I hope that that the stand is one of those things that they're thinking about and advocating for. That's my hope.
So Amy Watkins Jensen, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have been here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks to Dave Noyce.
Always a pleasure.
And to our producer, Chris Samuels. We remind our listeners that they can keep up on all the happenings in and about the church by subscribing to the Salt Lake Tribune's free Mormon Land newsletter. Just go to sltrib.com to sign up, and we'll talk again next time on Mormon Land.